Thank you for being here today. My name is Josh Lowe, and I'm the very proud Chief of Staff here in Forsyth County Schools. Now, as I was sharing a moment ago with some of you as we were talking, this is an annual overview that essentially talks about what LSC is for. What is the purpose of local school council? Kind of what is the expectations of you as a local school council member? And let me just start out by saying thank you for giving your time to be part of the journey of the local school council at your school and in your community. It's a very important role, maybe more so than you realize. I'm a former principal. This is my 13th year in Forsyth County Schools, my 26th year as an educator. And I will share that as part of my journey, I've had a lot of roles, but the one that I probably had the most direct dealing with local school councils, I was an assistant principal and the former principal at Forsyth Central. And I can tell you that many of the things that happened at our school during my tenure there came from direct feedback from the local school council. If it were things involving instruction, if it were things around campus, feedback annually for different projects that went on, from board projects and initiatives and efforts and so forth around the campus. So please know that your role is important and that you're appreciated. As I was talking, as we were kind of opening up a little about this is information that we have to go over. So if you feel like I'm perhaps reading some of the slides to you, I probably am, but then we'll have a little talk, we'll have some conversation about it, and I'll take any questions you have as well. But for Forsyth County School, local school council, the training overview, essentially there's five overall areas we're going to cover. The original purpose, basic structure, operations, potential topics for discussion, and then avenues for shared success. And the original purpose is for the parents in the community to play a vital role in the success of schools, to strengthen and enhance communication, increase participation among parents and community partners, deepening the connection between schools and communities while collaboratively addressing challenges, and then last but not least, provide meaningful support for teachers and to engage parents in school decision-making processes. And as I said, we'll go through some different ways that some of that happens. Once again, the original purpose, unite, to be a partner, to promote, and to collaborate. So everybody has a role. Essentially, everyone has the proverbial seat on the bus in terms of their part of the team. And we're going to go through those things. So the basic structure, each LSC is governed by its own set of bylaws that guides its operations. And as members, you must be composed of parents or guardians of the school, parents or guardians of students enrolled at the school, business persons affiliated with the school, teachers, the principal, and it must always have a minimum of 7 members. We get that question frequently, like how large or small can it be? The LSC can be as large as the principal, or the LSC determines it wants to be, but it can't be smaller than 7 members. As far as the composition, we said parents and guardians must make up the majority of the LSC. You know, at times there are people, there's always some teachers on the LSC, may want to have extra teachers or something like that. If there's ever additional people added that would make the LSC not have a majority parents, then you have to add more parents. So principals, if you're new principals in the room, you always have to have a majority of parents. 2 parents or guardians should also be business persons. It could be any type of business that is a supporter of the school. It's typically not just some random business in town. It's typically somebody that actually is invested in the school with some specific way or some program or pathway or something of that nature. And then at least 4 of the 7 members, at least 4 of the 7 members must be parents. None can be school employees. So occasionally there is that overlap where there is a parent that works at the school that wants to be on the LSC. That's fine, but you would also need to have a majority that was not school employees out of the 7 that's required. Basic structure, each LSC will vote for 3 officers. The chairperson, that must be a parent. They can't be a business partner. It must be a parent. The vice chairperson, the secretary, and then the officer election and the terms that are guided by the officer election and terms are guided by the bylaws. So oftentimes I get questions about the election process or who can be considered and things like that. those things should be spelled out in your bylaw. So principals, if you're here or if you're listening later on the recording, if you have questions about that, please call and we'll talk through it. But all of our schools currently have bylaws. They all were currently in compliance with expectations. So you can make changes to those through the proper process with the LSC agreeing on those changes, but you'll need to be sure that you're following those with your election processes. Basic structure and parameters. Once again, terms. Each LSC member could be elected to serve a 2-year term, and they can serve more than one term. Many parents get involved. They really enjoy it. They want to stay involved. Sometimes you have a parent that's got multiple kids, or maybe you're all 4 years of, if you're at a high school or an elementary where your kid's at the school for more than long enough for you to serve more than one term, you certainly can do that. Election dates and procedures are determined by the bylaws and should be staggered to ensure the continuity of leadership. Principals, always you should work with the LSC, not to have like the chairperson and the other officers and basically all LSC members all rolling off at the same time where you have a net zero one year. That's not productive for your school, for the conversations you're having. Also, the feedback you give us at the district level for us to share with our board for shared feedback. We need to have that continuity of discussion and insight. So be sure that you have staggered terms. Eligibility: individuals wishing to run for the LSC must be parents or guardians of the students currently enrolled at the school. So once again, many times there are former parents that really were engaged in the school that perhaps want to stay engaged or involved. That's okay if they want to be a volunteer, if they want to keep being a business partner, but they can't be like an LSC president or something of that nature if they don't have students at the school. Only parents or guardians are eligible to vote for parent representatives. That's another thing. Many times you'll have a business partner that wants to suggest an LSC member, or you'll have somebody that perhaps is your LSC, your former LSC president or somebody like that. They may have an opinion, but they can't vote on the actual parent representatives if they don't have students at the school currently. And then vacancies. Vacancies should be filled within the first 30 days through the election process unless the member had fewer than 90 days in their term. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Operations. Operations and meeting standards. The bylaws of the LSC guide and conduct the business of everything. So please, principals, and I know we have new principals in the room, be sure that we're paying attention to those bylaws, review them. If you need to call and talk through them, I'm happy to do that with you. Just let me know. Any adoption or changes to bylaws requires a 2/3 affirmative vote of the local school council. All meeting dates and times should be determined by a vote of the majority. Some principals may want to sometimes try to set the dates, and many principals, to their credit, and it's a really good thing, want to get ahead or get their schedule set for the year and things like that. Well, this is one of those things we have to have a process to do. We can't just put the dates on the calendar. All meetings require quorum, so if you have a minimum of 7, at least 4 of you have to be there, and meet no less than 4 times a year. Now, we get questions about that sometimes, the 4 times a year. You can meet as many times as you want to, and many of our communities are having the vertical team meetings now, where you have the elementary, the middle, and the high school meeting together as one large community event. That's okay, but typically there may be some exceptions, and that candidly could count as one of your 4, but it's okay to have 4 plus that one. Sometimes we get that question. You can have the additional one as a community, and I might actually say, while there's nothing wrong with letting that perhaps be one of your meetings, if that's what your LSC wants to do, I think it will be good to have 4 additional meetings just where you have that time together for your school to discuss your individual school needs, and perhaps that community meeting kind of guides the discussion of your local school. Maybe you heard something at if you're in an elementary school, you hear something at the middle school and you think, should we be doing this differently at our school or something of that nature? So you need to be sure you're having at least 4, as many as you want, but at least 4. And you need to advertise meetings in advance. That's a good time to have your social media team, be sure they're posting it in advance so that it shows up. However you typically communicate other school events, it's good to share that so that people come. Now, I would say that if you advertise it and other parents start showing up, they can come to the meeting as someone that sits and witnesses the meeting, or someone that sits and learns more about your school, but they can't come and vote. They can't come and start sharing their opinions. It's not a time for any personal agendas or points of interest or anything like that. Those should be reserved for meetings individually with the principal or whomever to discuss any concern they may have at the school. But they are allowed to come to the meeting if they want to come and be an observer. Any questions about any of these before we move forward? Okay. All right, operations and board expectations. The LSC provides an annual report to the Board of Education. Now let me share that those actually matter. So y'all need to have conversation throughout the year as you go. If there are things that you need done at your school, if it, tied around facility needs or concerns with any concern you have, that's where you provide that annually to the Board of Education. I will tell you, and I'm the lucky person that gets to present those to the board. We present those, we go through them, we talk through them. They ask questions, and then they work with our district team, our superintendent cabinet from all the different departments to see what we can and can't do. Now I will tell you, sometimes things are real quick, like, hey, we can work on that and take care of it next year. Sometimes it's 2 and 3 years in the making. But I can tell you specifically, and I'll use my own personal example. It's really the best one I have for me. I shared my 11 years at Forsyth Central. I'm sure, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that school, but there was a new home site at the stadium. There was a new field house. There were new equipment for STEM labs. There was a new humanities and film academy, career tech space added as part of a SPLOST renovation. Now, it was paid for through a SPLOST, but the ideas came from LSC feedback through the years. Now, once again, you might start suggesting that this year, and by the time you get funding in place or whatnot, it may be 2 and 3 years from now before you see it in action, but that's where that feedback plays in, so it's really important. So as y'all collaborate and talk about those things this year, be mindful that it's not always an immediate fix, but that is the roots of things actually happening at the school that typically are needs that are identified by parents in the community. Working with the principal, by the way. And the Forsyth County Schools practice, the LSC will be consulted regarding the selection of any new principal vacancies. All right, right now I'm looking, we have several new principals in here. The way that works, and I don't know how many of you are first-time LSC members, probably should have asked that when we started our conversation, but when a principal steps down or is transitioned to a new school or retires or whatever, within a couple of days, the superintendent and the associate superintendent of human resources will meet with the local school council, and they will discuss what are you looking for in your next leader. They don't ask for names, they don't ask for favorites or votes, but what traits do you want? What's going on at the school that we want to be sure that we're still able to lead? What characteristics are you looking for in your next leader? And then the superintendent comes back to the pool of candidates and works with our district team to identify which leader best aligns to the needs of the school based off feedback from the LSC. So I promise you, I personally know that in the last couple of years, there have been principals that really, some people that are currently principals, they interviewed really well that perhaps some of our initial discussions, hey, they might be a great fit here, but after LSC feedback, you realize, hey, that person needs to be at this school, not that school. So please know that feedback does matter and it is heard. And then just one more, the LSC provides any recommendations to the board. So as things come up, you have that opportunity as the LSC to share feedback directly to our board. Topics for discussion. The expectation for topics is that the LSC is there to serve as an advisory body. It is the responsibility of the LSC to provide meaningful advice and actionable recommendations to the principal, the board, and the superintendent on issues related to achievement and school improvement. Now, many times, local school council, like a lot of things in life, I think sometimes you might think it's this and it's really that. Well, what the LSC is, it is not a forum, and I'm just going to be candid, guys. It's not a forum for anybody to discuss any grievance at the school or their kid's schedule or what teacher's frustrating them or things like that. That's not what that's for. That's when you sit down and have an individual meeting with the principal and or the teachers involved and things like that. Some parents have to be reminded of that sometimes. But with that said, you can talk about anything school related that is specific to the entire school at LSC meetings. So I've got here on this slide several things that are often discussions of feedback from local school councils. And as we're going through our annual board feedback at the end of the year, I share with you that you get a chance to give feedback to the board. That will come in the late winter, early spring. It's usually submitted back to us no later than April or May, but principals will receive that information, so you'll know it's time. With that said, school board policies, curriculum and assessment, development of a school profile, community engagement, extracurriculars, school-based community service, discipline and attendance, school improvement plans, state report cards, budgets, communication strategies, use of facilities, progress reports, special needs services, and on and on and on. That's just some obvious ones, perhaps, but that doesn't mean you can't talk about other things. But that's just some ideas. So new principals in the room, those are the typically topics that are shared. Other things you can do is oftentimes LSCs enjoy tours. So, you know, we're very blessed with a lot of tremendous facilities in our community. If you want to see the new safety center or you want to tour Focal, which I know we're meeting in this morning, there's all kinds of things you can do in addition to just a sit and discuss LSC meeting if you want to learn more about different things. Avenues for success, maybe that's a nice way to say a few reminders. LSC members represent the entire school community, not special interest groups, clubs, or teams in which the individual's children are a part of. So if your kid plays basketball and he has a tough game and the coach frustrated you, that's not what we talk about the next morning at LSC. Might talk to the principal about it later, but not at LSC. Successful LSCs see themselves as a team. I think that I've seen that through the years too. The ones that come together that actually have a shared purpose are the ones that are most productive and the ones that achieve the most for the students at our school and that community. Members of great teams understand their roles. So it's always important, and guys, I'm not trying to say this condescendingly, but being a LSC member or the LSC chairperson does not give you right to be the principal. The principal has to lead the school under the direction of Dr. Young and our Board of Education. That means that you might have the principal's ear, so to speak, to sit with them and discuss things or to talk through the agenda of the LSC meeting. But it's always important to know our role, just as the principal's not a parent. They might be a parent, but as far as the LSC, they're not there as a parent. They're there as the principal. So it's important to understand our roles within the bylaws of the LSC. So principals, please go back, be sure that your LSC are familiar with their bylaws, and that everybody kind of understands their role to be the most effective team that you can be. LSC members, constituents are the whole school community. So LSC members, you are the avenue, not that any parent can't call and get a meeting with the principal if they need one, but you're the one if there's really a discussion going on in the community. Principals can really utilize you as a great resource of somebody that's going out and about, talking to other parents, maybe sharing what's really going on. You know, I can tell you many times in school, we can tell the story, but when you're talking about other people's children, you can't always, you know, clearly you're not going to just share what all's going on. But if there's rumors of this is happening at the school or that's going at the school, you can't always address those rumors. But what you can do as an LSC member is go out and say, this is what's really happening. This is the process that the school follows, or this is the curriculum we discussed at the LSC meeting, or hey, you know, there's a coaching opening or a director opening, and the principal shared with us it was open, and their timeline to replace that position is this. There's a variety of things you can do as almost a positive ambassador for your school as an LSC member to the whole school community. Trust among LSC members is vital. Positive communication is a key to that trust. So guys, I would always say it's important that you talk as an LSC. You know, you have frequent communication. Also, outside of being a positive ambassador to the whole community, LSC meetings need to be somewhat of a safe space where y'all can have real conversations that, you know, the rest of the members know you're not going to go out and repeat to the rest of the community, or you're not going to go out and, you know, share things on social media or things like that that happened in a closed, you know, in a meeting at school that was discussing actually perhaps an issue that's going on. And LSC members are advisors to the principals. and the principals are the deciders, and I kind of said that already. Just a quick reminder as we look to be successful, focusing on our why rather than why we oppose things helps drive the forward thinking and meaningful progress. Now I'll tell you where this kind of comes from. Several years ago, a book came out by a guy named Jeff Henderson called The Book 4. And many leaders in our district read that. I read it. It was gifted to me by a retired administrator. And essentially the book goes through so many times in life we find struggle, or we find maybe lack of consensus when we're in here debating things that are like what we're against or what we're frustrated with. Well, I promise if you have a kid at the school or you're a business partner with students at a school, you can find something you can unilaterally agree that the school needs. You can find something that we all as a shared team can agree on. So it's important for the LSC, what are we for? We might be against that, we might be against that, and that's fine. It's the American way. We're all free to have our opinions. But what can we agree that we're for? What can we focus on taking care of as a school? What can we focus on doing to support our teachers and our students to be sure our kids have the best possible education they can have? That's what we're all there for. And at the end of the day, and I say this to educators all the time, if you're there and you're not for what's best for kids, you need to evaluate why you're there. And if you as an educator can't wake up in the morning and realize that maybe I haven't had the greatest night's sleep, or maybe yesterday I was frustrated, but there's a room full of kids that need me, and I have to go in and I have to do my very best to take care of those kids, well, you probably need to evaluate if you really want to be an educator. And I would say the same applies to local school councils. If you come to a meeting and you're not there to do what's best for kids, you might need to evaluate if that's really what you need to be doing. And I trust that everyone here, that's what you want to do, or you wouldn't be here. But what are we for? And so many people sometimes lose sight of that when things come up that they disagree on. And that's why, I tell folks all the time, we need to disagree without being disagreeable. And that's a challenge sometimes in life. But with that said, I think focusing on what we're for, taking care of our students, and working together to support our school is something we can all agree on. Revisiting our district and school belief statement serves as a powerful reminder of why. So every school's got their own statements, but what are we here for? As a district, we're here to support all students, keep them safe, connected so that they can thrive. And that looks different to different kids. It looks different in different communities, but that's what we're all here for. More avenues to success. I won't read that to you, but there's various other ways for us to work together and be sure that we're all here for students. And that brings us to a close. Does anybody have questions? It's kind of cut and dry. As I mentioned, there's local school council bylaw, guidance, insight, and so forth on the district website under the Chief of Staff section. If you want to review that. Principals, you'll be shared the PowerPoint as well as shared the video link once it's loaded to share with members that weren't able to be here today. And otherwise, I genuinely want to thank you for being here today and giving your time. I'm happy to take questions as a group or individually when we wrap up. And if I can ever help you, please call me. Once again, my name is Josh Lowe, and you can just call the district office line, and that's how you best get me. So thank you all for being here.